Listen, you're not gonna find anything on me, okay? Trust me.
Empty your pockets into the tray, sir, or we'll have to. Your pockets, sir?
Lady, the problem isn't in my pants.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and normally within 10 of Swords, This Week in X-Men has kind of been dedicated to that event. We have covered the 2 or 3 chapters that came out this week, but this week it was the 10 of Swords Stasis #1, which I've already reviewed on the channel, given my thoughts. So today we're opening things up, and it's a good thing because there's actually some X-Men news to talk about in This Week in X-Men. Gerry Duggan is going to be co-writing a Wolverine comic. Is there more Wolverine in his future? We know he's also going to be doing the Wolverine Black, White, and Red. I think that's what it's called. He's doing a story in there as well. Doc, like I said, he's going to give his thoughts on Ten of Swords Stasis. We're going to talk about Prelude to a Future Past, which is part of the Marvel-made Paragon Chris Claremont collection that Doc may or may not have purchased right now already for the small price of $200. And then we will hit the Sword preview that came out in Polygon this week. We got some more information about Al Ewing and the story, and Valerio Schiti, and some more of the character designs and stuff like that. Now, obviously with me, as always, is the X-Men historian, the Marvel aficionado, the man that you seem to piss off X-Men fans. What is it about you that does that, Doc?
I wish I knew, but I really don't care.
I think you have a sunny disposition most of the time, unless it's talking about bad comics.
Yes. You talk about bad comics, I'm going to shit on some bad comics. Talk about good comics, I will go grab some friggin' pom-poms, man.
Yeah. I think some people are enjoying everything in Donovex, and that's wonderful and beautiful. I'm not one of them. You're certainly not one of them. But
no.
That is not why we're here today, Doc. We're here to get into all these wonderful stories. Now, I do want to say this. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoy this content. Give us a thumbs down if you don't. And definitely crap all over Doc in the comment section. We love hearing that.
I love it. I love it.
Now, this first story comes from this preview that Marvel put out amidst the clash of swords. Obviously, Ten of Swords. Will an old spark reunite? X-Men Ten of Swords. Obviously, there's been a lot of polyamorous activity on Krakoa. Wolverine has essentially been the meat in the Jean and Scott Sammy for quite a while. It's heavily hinted at that there's a menage a trois going on there, and it appears that Storm is entering the arena of polyamorous activity with the group.
Yay!
This on itself is not it's somewhat annoying, unless Wolverine has decided to kick all the other people he's banging to the curb, and he's going to be with Storm full time, which I don't believe so. I think this is just part of the weird we're banging everybody story arc that's going on within Donovex and has been since it started. But the big thing here is right here in the middle. It says Ben Percy, Gerry Duggan, and Joshua Cassara. Joshua Cassara has obviously been doing he's been doing X-Force.
Yeah.
This isn't Victor McDonovich. This isn't one of the Kuberts. So I can do the artist change. Joshua Cassara has been doing and very well in X-Force, in my opinion. But Gerry Duggan here has been an enormous bomb on
everything.
I think his Marauders, which has a great premise, has been thoroughly wasted. Although I don't think Vita Ayala was a step up in her first issue. We're not going to talk about it, but I'll still never like the weird way that every single person that talked positive about that comic said the exact same thing about this is the perfect voice for Storm. Like, why did they all say it the exact same way? That comic sucked ass. But Gerry Duggan's Cable also has been quite bad, except probably for the last issue. Yeah. And he is getting a trial run here, obviously, with Ben Percy on Wolverine. He is writing one of the stories in the Wolverine anthology that's starting next week. I know I've got bad feelings about this, Doc. I think Gerry Duggan is taking over Wolverine in the not-so-distant future.
I'm leaning towards that as well. Seems like every creator just displaces a better creator. Jerry's bad, Vita's worse. Vita replaced Gerry. Ben Percy's good, but now we're bumping him for Gerry Duggan. So we all get a downgrade while they all get promotions, and good creators get pushed away. So good luck with that, Marvel. That's been your approach for the last decade. You keep giving bad creators promotions. We get crappier comics. You charge more money. And then the good creators vanish to go do some terrible creator-owned thing that nobody cares about. But look, Gerry Duggan sucks. I mean, there's really nothing else to say on that.
There's Joshua more to say, Doc. I'm going to play.
No. The Joshua Cassera thing is interesting. I have a sneaking suspicion they're going to do that the same way that they did the Victor Bogdanovich taking an issue of X-Force. That Joshua Cassera is going to do an issue of Wolverine and X-Force, and they're going to do the next two chapters where they handle it kind of the same way they did the Wolverine X-Force issues with Bogdanovich. So that's kind of not really surprising. Gerry Duggan going back to the well of, look, we all stopped giving a damn about, like, we're all trying to forget that like 2008-ish through about 2019 X-Men ever happened. We're all trying to forget that. And the Logan and Storm thing, bringing that back up from the objectively terrible Wolverine and the X-Men Volume 2, it was atrocious. It was a terrible comic. Don't ever read it unless you just want to make your brain hurt. It was during the Axis era where they were doing the switcher, thing where good people became bad and bad people became good, whatever, it doesn't matter. And all it was to try to capitalize on the obviously forced romance from the third X-Men movie, like that X-Men The Last Stand that came out a couple of years prior. They decided that they were going to then bring that into the comics because that was never there. They were flirty, but never in an actual we get into a thing together way. No, it never made sense. The
all right, Doc, you're going long. I am going to say this: Gerry Duggan has done very well on Savage Avengers, and Wolverine is one of the characters in there. So there is hope for this. And Ben Percy is co-writing the next issue of Marauders, or is it? He's co-writing the next issue of Marauders with Gerry Duggan. But I have a very bad sneaking suspicion. I have heard rumors from a couple of different sources that Ben Percy was not long for Dawn of X and would be exiting relatively soon. So I think this is the first step.
I'm leaning towards you're probably correct on that because I've heard similar rumor. I hope it's not the case because he's easily the best creator in that current office, and him leaving will be a massive blow because everyone else below him significantly sucks.
Yeah, he's even outshining Jonathan Hickman. It's not even very close.
No.
So speaking of Jonathan Hickman, this week we got Ten of Swords Stasis #1. There's a lot to like in here, but there's a lot to dislike. Obviously, it's co-written by Jonathan Hickman, and probably the problem with it is that T.N.E. Howard is the other co-creator.
Yes.
There's way too much stuff going on in Otherworld whenever that setting comes into play. Anywhere in X-Men, it just everything dies.
I mentally check out at that point as well. Because honestly, as Otherworld was hard for me to really give a damn about when it was Chris Claremont and Alan Davis. It's even harder. And sorry, Tinny, you are no Chris Claremont. You are absolutely no Alan Davis. And you never will be. So you can't do it. Just that simple. This is your weird, fantasy, portal fantasy, fanfic that you just shove the X-Men into. And it gets really tedious. So I checked out the same way. However, I will say that I did like the way that they did the the sword bearers of Morocco. If that's the way they would have done all the X-Men collecting swords for, the first 10 chapters, I wouldn't hate this event as nearly as much as I do.
I kind of wish they would have just, the first 10 chapters would have been in one issue, sword bearer of Krakoa gets his sword, and the other issue, in that issue, the other side of the story is sword bearer of Morocco gets a sword. It would have been much more interesting than all the stupid politicking stuff that we've got.
Yeah, I would have been down with that too. Or if they would have just done the kind of montage where they go and get their, they go and talk to somebody. It doesn't really matter. You don't need to see the adventure to get the sword. It doesn't really help anything. Doesn't add anything to the story. It just feels like, you took 2 pages and padded it out to 22. But this one, I like the way that they did the collecting of the swords for the sword bearers of Morocco. That was cool. I got to ask
you about the big reveal. We predicted this essentially since the event started. We met Annihilation. We saw how the demise of Genesis. It was like, okay, Genesis is Annihilation.
Yes. And if this was your attempt at a big mid-story swerve, you really, really need to, M. Night Shyamalama Ding Dong, you are not. This was as predictable as the sun coming up tomorrow.
There's foreshadowing, and then there's blatantly telling you what's going to happen with the big reveal.
Yes. Yeah. If you thought that you were even remotely keeping that a secret, you failed miserably, because everyone on the planet, everyone with 2 eyes, knew what was coming there. And we got it. I mean, okay, is it a little bit interesting? I mean, I find it amusing that Apocalypse is more shocked than anybody that reads it.
Yeah. All right, Doc, I got to ask you. I'm a little worried now. We're halfway through the event. There's been no fighting. This is supposed to be a big contest of champions, Mortal Kombat style event. Yet there's been no combat. There's been no contest yet. Please tell me that the mutants are going to fight with their abilities and not just swords.
I freaking hope so. I really do, because if they are restricted in some way from using their mutant abilities, and it's just their swords, it's stupid.
Who wants to see Storm without some lightning?
Who wants to see Wolverine without his claws?
Well, technically those are extra swords.
Yeah, I understand, okay. But I mean,
but you get what I'm saying, though, right?
Yeah, nobody. This is setting up an event that nobody really cares about seeing. Okay, when they did hey, all the X-Men are wearing power nullifying collars during when Cameron Hodge captured them all in Extinction Agenda, it was interesting to find out how they would get out of the pit and get their powers back. But that was for one issue. And so unless they're doing something where they're going to figure out how to get around whatever restriction it is, if they want to put that restriction on, that's fine. But unless they get around it really quickly and cleverly, I don't want to see the actual fight without their powers. It's stupid.
That would be stupid.
Yes. So. And honestly, at this rate, though, I'm not sure if we're going to get to the actual fighting until the last 3 chapters.
Chapter 20.
Yeah. Chapter 20, 21, and 22. There's your fighting.
Yeah. There needs to be more conflict before we actually get into the fighting.
Yeah.
So we learned this week that Marvel has a special edition coming out called Marvel Made Paragon, Chris Claremont. And it's going to collect a lot of his X-Men stories, including Days of Future Past. And it's going to have an original story called Prelude to a Future Past from Chris Claremont with Salvador Larroca on the art. It's a big-ass book, and then it's got a slipcase that isn't a slipcase. It's just another big book to put the book inside. It's just a box.
Yeah, it's a box. I believe it's a book-shaped box.
I believe it's $200.
Yeah, $199. It's a little pricey. It's not even really an oversized hardcover. The box is the book-shaped box that they're calling a slipcase that is not a slipcase. Marvel, you slip things into a slipcase, you place things into a box. This is not complicated. But no, it's a little pricey, but at the same time, it's about the same content that you get out of an omnibus, and Marvel omnibuses are about $125. Plus, you get a bunch of prints. You get an extra box for a fancy box for it. You get a limited edition, floppy comic in there. So, is it a little pricey? Yes, it's still a little overpriced in my opinion. I did break down and buy it, but I am looking forward to reading this, especially since the one thing to keep in mind for X-Men fans, single issue floppies that are limited run, not variant, but individual comics where the run itself or the book itself is limited and is only available through non-traditional, markets. Like this is available through essentially Read Pop. Is they tend to end up shooting up way high in price. I look at the Wolverine 102.5 issue that you got through that you had to mail away from the Bisco, and that's like a $400 book for a single issue floppy. And
this is limited to 1,200, right?
No. It I thought it was initially as well. It's just the way that they're doing this is similar like a crowdfund, except for they're not using Kickstarter or Indiegogo. They need 1,200 in order to make it. It's 1,200 is going to be the minimum run on it. It's only sold about 300 so far. They only have about 20 more days to get the other 900, which might make it a little sketchy. And there was also one thing in there that the upper description where it says like, here's what you get. And it said like a special limited Oliver Copier variant of Wolverine number 6. Except for if you read all the way down to the bottom, apparently you might only get that if you currently have, or at the time of your, when the campaign closes, have a Marvel Unlimited subscription, and you bought it. You bought the Paragon thing with the same email address that your Marvel Unlimited subscription is under. So if you buy it on Apple Pay, F you. Basically, you don't get it. So it is a little confusing. Like you're getting a little gypped from that. But I mean, I do like the idea of having this a little prelude story. I love Claremont and LaRocca. They always pair up very well. So I mean, it is kind of cool, and we're getting extra. This is going to be Uncanny X-Men 140.5. So
and the prelude art looks great. The obviously the page that's introducing the creative team and the name of the story looks pretty badass.
Yes, I always loved whenever they do the title into the background, especially out of rubble. That was always a cool Claremont thing. I mean, it was kind of a cool super Marvel superhero comics thing, and we've gotten away from that. I like it being brought back.
I'm a fan, so you'll have to tell us how that turns out. Hopefully it hits the 1,200 orders and you get your order. Now, the last thing we got to talk about, there was a substantial preview of Sword, the up-and-coming Dawn of X title from not Gerry Duggan, Al Ewing, with art by Valerio Schiti. Obviously, Valerio was the artist on Empire with Al Ewing and Dan Slott. Yep. Not a big fan of Empire. This is being set up in the pages, I believe. Cable, we just saw Cable and Cyclops and Jean Grey up on that space station. They turned it on. Apparently, that's going to have something to do with it. Interesting cast. I hate pretty much all the character designs. I think the uniforms are really stupid. Are you excited for this? Because I couldn't be less excited.
Oh, I mean, the cover looks like the freaking Burger King Kids Club. They even got a wheelchair guy.
He can walk, He's just
Yeah.
lazy.
I honestly don't remember because WizKid, I haven't really noticed him since like Exterminators back in the late 80s. I never liked Manifold as a character because it was just like the lazy way of using Gateway, but you didn't have to work around the fact that he didn't speak. So I don't like the character designs so far. They're unnecessarily complicated. But for the most part, I mean, I don't mind the cast. I think giving Cable something to do is a good idea because he's been tremendously underutilized since Dawn of X, really, since Extinction.
He's got his own series.
Yeah, but he's tremendously underutilized even in his own series, and especially since they've already seemed to have dropped the future Cable coming back thing that they were hinting at in the first couple issues. So giving him something to do is probably a good idea rather than see him having a playing duck Stepford Cuckoo. I don't understand that. I do kind of like as I said, I kind of like the cast. I don't like the way that they basically turned Fabian Cortez into Christian Frost. I literally thought that was Christian Frost. And I didn't realize it was Fabian Cortez until I read this interview because it looks exactly the way that Christian Frost has been portrayed in Marauders to this point. That's not Fabian Cortez. Sorry. That is not anything that Fabian would wear. He is not that kind of prim and proper kind of character. So a 3-piece suit, no. Although I do like bringing back Abigail Brand, and I like having Magneto involved. So I'm willing to give this series a shot. I just really wish Manifold was gone and WizKid. They've got so many other techno paths they could have used that were much more interesting that they didn't. So
I don't know. Just anytime Al Ewing does the cosmic stuff, I check out really fast. Like whether it be Empire, what else did he do?
You know what? I really loved when he did the Ultimates and Ultimates 2 with the one with like Blue Marvel and American Chavez and even Captain Marvel. Like it was like a bunch of characters that everyone hated, and at the time he made them awesome. He made them not insufferable. And if he can bring that same, and at the time I thought, okay, the way he handled like the cosmic, like beyond cosmic, like the cosmic level entity stuff in that series was awesome. I thought he would have been a great choice for Fantastic Four, and then he blocked me on Twitter for some inexplicable reason.
He blocked everyone on Twitter.
Yeah, I know.
This is who you follow. He's a block botter.
But I thought he really displayed some chops for that kind of, really big concept stuff back then. And I didn't read Empire, so maybe I didn't get as turned off as you, but I thought if he can kind of channel some of what he did on Ultimates and Ultimates 2, I think it has a pretty good chance of being at least interesting.
Well, maybe I'll check that out, but I can tell you his Guardians of the Galaxy has been quite boring. Empire was not very much fun. Mortal Hulk was awesome, but obviously that has not anything to do with Cosmic until the one Cosmic issue, number 25, which was awful. All right, Doc, well, that's basically going to wrap us up. We're at the 24-minute mark here on this video.
Now,
we covered.
One last thing, though, with Sword. It may be where we start getting into the shit from House of X, Powers of X, that we actually all gave a damn about. With the Phalanx.
The Phalanx stuff was the most boring part of House of X, Powers 10 to me.
Oh, I love the whole concept of the Phalanx and them becoming, kind of intergalactic. So
yeah, there's a lot of stuff I liked in House of X Powers of 10. We're likely going to have talked about that in the live stream, but that was There was a lot of information dumped on me on those pages.
Okay, that's fair.
But we'll see. I'll, obviously I'll be checking out the first issue, reviewing it here on the channel. Doc, thank you so much for joining me today. Really appreciate it. This week in X-Men, obviously we'll be talking about Ten of Swords next week. I believe it's X-Men number 14 and Marauders 14.
All right. I'm down. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out.
Later, brother.
Take care.